I look around the league, I don't see many players impacting the game on the defensive end the way I do. I don't see many players completely throwing off an entire team's offense the way I do.
We're going to break down the all-defensive team on this one, the two teams, and who I think really deserves to be on it. I did the all-NBA team. To be honest, this one right here, the defensive one, is a little bit more harder because you can't just go off of stats. You really got to be watching these guys and how they play, help defense, on-ball defense, in the zone. I will bring up the defensive rating at times for some of the players to really buffer my point when I'm making some of these selections. There was a year when Dennis Rodman won Defensive Player of the Year, but Akeem Olajuwon was averaging about 4 blocks a game, while Dennis was averaging less than 2, and I think Akeem was averaging a good amount of steals as well. I bring that up to emphasize, again, it's not only about the numbers, however, we will factor it in to a certain degree. I'm going to start off with the all-defensive second team, and in the backcourt, I have Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown is the one who's guarding the opponent's best player every time the Boston Celtics play. It's not Jason Tatum, though he is a good defender himself, but it's Jaylen Brown who's guarding a Luka Doncic when they face the Lakers, for example. He's the one who's going to have to guard a Trae Young if they're facing the Atlanta Hawks. On top of that, as I make this video currently, the Boston Celtics are ranked 3rd best in the NBA for opponents' points allowed, and they are ranked 2nd best for opponents' field goal percentage. That's not a coincidence when you have a guy like Jaylen Brown who can really strap up your superstar player. Beside him in the backcourt, I'm going to go with Chris Dunn of the Los Angeles Clippers. If you haven't been watching this team, I thought that they would have been in the lottery after the whole Paul George situation. Kawhi Leonard's down. They were actually one of the best defensive teams in the NBA when it comes to opponents' points allowed. Chris Dunn averages 1.7 steals per game and a great on-ball defender. Next up for the front court now, I'm going to go with Jalen Williams from the OKC Thunder. He is ranked number 1 for the individual defensive rating, and let me explain that for people who may not know. Basically, the defensive rating is based off of every time you're on the court, for every 100 possessions, how many points do you give up? Jalen Williams gives up 106.6 points, which is ranked the lowest, meaning that he's the best for this rating. Now, of course, this statistic could be deceptive. If you're a bad defender, but you got 3 or 4 other guys on your team on the court, every time you're there to help you out so that they can hide your defensive deficiencies. Maybe they want you on offense, so they got to have you out there. Well, then you could have a really high rating and look good because of the other players who are making it up for you. For example, James Harden is not known as a really good defender, but he's ranked somewhere in the top 20, I believe, for this rating. But when you got Zubac playing defense, Kawhi playing defense, Norman Powell playing defense, it makes you look good too. In the case of Jalen Williams, though, we know he can really strap up, so this does not apply, obviously. Giannis Antetokounmpo is who I have next. This may be considered a hot take by some, as I know people out there would put Jaren Jackson. However, when I look at the Milwaukee Bucks, they're top 10 in opponents' field goal percentage, top 10 in opponents' field goal three-point percentage. They're just outside the top 10 for opponents' points allowed. Giannis Antetokounmpo individually is a great defender, so I don't want to make this seem like I'm basing this off of just the team, as if Giannis is not impacting the defensive side of the ball for his team as well. In the case of Jaren Jackson, his blocks are a little bit down. Usually he gives you about 2 or 3. Of course, that doesn't mean he's not a good defender anymore, but on top of that, the Memphis Grizzlies are actually one of the worst teams in giving up points. So I just edged it to Giannis. I can see why somebody would still put Jaren Jackson there. Y'all can let me know in the comment section. For the final spot on this defensive second team, I'm going to go with Jared Allen, and I'm not going to go over a bunch of statistics. I'm going to tell you straight up, I've watched quite a bit of Cleveland Cavaliers games. As you can tell on my page, I've broken down a lot of their plays, what I see, and in a lot of those breakdowns I show Jared Allen plays where he's impacting the game so tremendously on the defensive side of the ball. I'm just going with what I see, and I think Jared Allen deserves to be on one of these teams, okay? You can let me know if you agree or disagree. For the all-defensive first team, I'm going to go with Dyson Daniels in the backcourt. Here's the thing. The Atlanta Hawks are not a good defensive team at all. However, when you look at Dyson Daniels averaging just over 3 steals a game, usually if you look year after year, the most you see for steals per game by an individual player is about 2, maybe just a little bit over it. The fact that he's getting over 3 and he's a tenacious on-ball defender, he's not somebody who's just gambling or picking his spots and really putting the team in a bad situation to get a steal, as some people may do, which is not exactly great defense. No, he could strap up somebody and still get you steals. I got him on this team. Lou Dort is who I have next besides Daniels. He's another tenacious on-ball defender, as I discussed described for Dyson. And this is the thing, with Lu Dort, he's a little bit bigger, so he can really put the clamps on somebody when it comes to defense. The OKC Thunder, they're number 2 in opponents' points allowed. They're number 1 in opponents' field goal percentage. They're number 1 in steals per game. They're third, basically tied for third when it comes to blocks per game. All across the board, they are top in every defensive category, and Lu Dort is another player on that team who plays really great defense. He got to be on an all-defensive first team. Amen Thompson is who I'm going with in the front court. The Houston Rockets are another great defensive team, a top 1 in the NBA. Amen Thompson is ranked 4th for individual defensive rating as well. He's also, I think most people would agree with, the best defender on the Houston Rockets, period. Maybe Dylan Brooks. But based on what I've been watching, I'm going to give the edge to Amen Thompson for this one. He's on the all-defensive first team. Next is Draymond Green, who by all odds is favored right now to win Defensive Player of the Year. The thing with Draymond Green, man, he can make an all-defensive team almost every single year. You can make that argument. He was also never a top offensive player in his prime. He did give you a lot more than what you see now. As a result, because he's not asked to do as much as he may have done a little bit more in his prime, it gives him more focus, in my opinion, on the defensive end, which has catapulted him back to these conversations for Defensive Player of the Year. Evan Mobley is who I gave this last spot to for the all-defensive first team. He is my Defensive Player of the Year. As I mentioned earlier, I've been covering a lot of the Cavaliers game, breaking down film. I talked about Jared Allen, and in a lot of those videos, I mentioned how Evan Mobley, to me, is their best defensive player and just overall best player because of what he does on both sides of the ball. He's also ranked 7th for individual defensive rating, and his teammate Jared Allen is just above him at number 5. I want to mention also some other names that I really wanted to consider and then they didn't make it, maybe honorable mentions. Bam Adebayo is one of those names. Regardless of how much the Miami Heat are struggling, he himself is still playing individually really great defense. As a matter of fact, if you watch the game when Jimmy Butler came back into Miami with the Golden State Warriors, Bam Adebayo himself was guarding Butler on some of those possessions, and Butler didn't look himself that game. He scored under 15 points even with Steph Curry not playing. Another name I want to throw out there, Zubac from the LA Clippers. As I said, Clippers are one of the best defensive teams. Zubac is also mentioned for Defensive Player of the Year. He's in the odds favors. He's not exactly a favorite, but he's kind of a little bit in the distance. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Cason Wallace. There's actually a number of names from OKC you could pick. They have been doing so great defensively, with them just leading or in the top 3, top 5 for a lot of different categories this year. There's different names you could throw out. I put Jalen Williams and Lu Dort. To me, those were the 2. All right, y'all let me know if I got these names right. Who else would you want to mention in this list? What is yours for the first and second? I want to know. Hit me up in the comment section. Like, share, and subscribe. And as always, salute for listening. Peace.